Welcome to Grow Virtually, an online horticultural educational program presented by the Master Gardener Volunteers of Cobb County. Under the guidance of the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension Service, we grow gardeners.
My name is Joy Chanin. I'm a Master Gardener Volunteer here in Cobb County, and we are going to talk tonight about in the weeds. Tonight we are hoping to become familiar with some common lawn and garden weeds, understand their growth habits, and learn methods of weed control. So what is a weed? A weed is a plant that is out of place. Why do we want to control weeds? Well, weeds can become aggressive and difficult to manage, such as English ivy or chamber bitter or crabgrass or nutsedge. They can be poisonous to humans and animals, such as oleander or castor beans. They can be parasitic, like mistletoe or wisteria. Some weeds can be a carrier or a host for serious insects or disease. And some are new or they're not common to the United States. Most of us are familiar with kudzu, and kudzu became a little too comfortable in the United States. The term noxious also has legal ramifications for states that have noxious weed laws or regulations. Why do we want to control weeds? We want to maintain the desired look of our landscape, or in some cases, we need to comply with homeowners' regulations. They do compete with desired plants for the nutrients, the sun, and the water. They may be host to undesirable insects and diseases. And even a desired weed can spread uncontrollably, like English ivy. They can upset the local insect ecosystem, such as invasive plants. It's up to you if you determine if English ivy is a weed or not. It is not advisable to let English ivy or other vines grow up trees, as they can strangle the tree. The best way to control that is to cut the vines at the base of the tree, and once the vines dry, you can pull them off. There's an old adage for English ivy: first year it sleeps, second year it creeps, and the third year it leaps. Why are my weeds so happy? Well, weeds survive and thrive due to a number of reasons, one of which is their ability to produce so many seeds. You'll notice here there's pictured pigweed, one pigweed plant can produce up to 200,000 seeds. Crabgrass can produce 53,000 seeds per plant. And we wonder why we are trying to control these. Seeds are sometimes buried deep into the ground and can be viable for years to come. The fact that they lie dormant for years underscores the good home gardening management practice of not turning the soil too deeply after preparing your bed for gardening. Stick to the top few inches after mulching or applying landscape barriers to help seeds that are buried not become full-grown weeds. Why are my weeds so happy? Well, they thrive in the environment that they are in. This spotted spurge is probably one of my least favorite weeds. It seems to grow everywhere, especially in the cracks of sidewalk and concrete and driveway. Here's a photo here also of the common broadleaf plantain. The environment of your soil may be unfavorable for desired plants, but they may be desirable for weeds. The environment might be too wet or too dry, too compacted, too acidic, too infertile, too shady, poorly drained. Any of these could be conditions favorable for weeds. If you look at this picture of maple seed weeds, manual seed removal is sometimes impossible to manage. Pine cones, acorns, gumballs, poplars, the maple seeds, and other seeds like these lie unseen in our gardens, and they're either put there by wildlife or the wind, which make a weed-free landscape very difficult. Understanding how weeds reproduce helps you control them. Does that weed primarily spread by seed? And how are the seeds dispersed? Are they dispersed by wind, gravity, water, animals, including humans? You look at that beautiful powder puff of a dandelion puff, and I remember as a kid always blowing those, not realizing that I was spreading dandelions to other parts of the yard. If you look at that picture of chamber bitter weed, the seeds are on the bottom. If you step on that, you are probably planting about 50 more plants for next summer. So the seeds on that chamber bitter You can see at the bottom of the leaves, and that is one way that we are spreading those seeds. Does the weed spread via underground root systems, such as rhizomes or stolons? This is common in our grassy weeds. If you don't remove what is under the ground, the plant can persist indefinitely. They can. Some of these are greenbrier, bamboo, Bermuda grass. There are more than 15 species of greenbrier, and some of them are native to and commonly found in our area. UGA and Clemson both have good articles on how to control greenbrier. Get to the root of the problem. Weeds like dandelions, thistles, crabgrasses, and others have very deep roots. Proper weed identification, or being sure you remove the entire plant, will help ensure that your weed does not grow back. Now you look at this picture of the Canada thistle. That cross-section of the roots is about 3 feet deep. So it's very difficult to control, and it is found in Georgia. So sometimes a pretty flower may be something that you don't want to nurture. Weed identification. Like other plants, survival of the weeds require oxygen, the temperature, light, water, and nutrients. If any one of these is missing, there's less likelihood of the plant surviving. Weed identification. Well, that's part of what we do as Master Gardeners and the Extension Service. We're here to help. We ask that you observe, document, explore, and then we can help teach you how to control that weed. Pictured here is wild lettuce. Sometimes you just don't understand what is growing where or what to do about it. People move from one part of the country to another, or even from one part of the world to another, and they come across weeds that they're not familiar with or plants they're not familiar with. And that's why we use our extension service. And also we try and control invasive weeds from being transported to new places. Observe and document. Take a picture close up and further away. Write down the date and the conditions in which the plant was growing. Was it growing in sun or shade or partial sun or partial shade? Were the conditions dry? Were they moist? All plants either thrive or die depending on the conditions in which they're growing. Your photographs, both close up and further away, help us identify, and the conditions that the plant is growing in help us identify what the weed is. Observe and document plant parts. What is the shape of the leaves? Are there any distinguishing features like thorns, fuzzy leaves, colored stems? Check the underside of the leaves. Is it a different color than the top side? It goes without saying that if you're touching unknown plants, especially vines, wear gloves, long sleeves, long pants, socks, shoes, and don't touch your face. Look how pretty this poison ivy plant looks in the fall. Be very cautious if you burn your weeds. My husband had a student once whose family was burning some brush. And in that brush, unbeknownst to them, there was poison ivy. That student inhaled the smoke and ended up hospitalized with poison ivy in his lung. And it took quite a while for him to recover. He was very, very sick. So please know what it is that you're burning as well as what you're pulling or spraying. Does this plant bloom? Remember that a weed is a plant that is in the wrong place. You may decide this is a weed you like. Pictured here are wild violets, and there are places in my yard that I encourage wild violets to grow. There are some places I don't want them, but to me, many times they're pretty. And also in my case with wild violets, they are a real good indicator of when I need to water because they're one of the first things that droop. Depending on the time of the year, you may need to wait to see what comes up before you determine if you have a weed. I've even put some wild violets in some pots. Explore for answers. Search reliable websites relevant to our region. We always go to the University of Georgia first. It is our primary source here in Georgia of fact-based information. Sometimes we'll use Clemson or North Carolina State because they have similar climates as we do here in Georgia. Walter Reeves is an accepted Georgia gardening expert. There's also a Center for Invasive Species at UGA. You can call or visit the UGA Cobb County Extension or check our resources page at www.cobbmastergardeners.com. Explore. Is the plant an annual, perennial, or biennial? How does it reproduce? When does it grow? In North Georgia, summer weeds generally start in April and end in October. Summer weeds might be crabgrass, carpetweed, spurge, chamber, bittercress. Winter weeds generally start in September and end by May. Annual bluegrass. Remember, there's 2,000 seeds in an annual bluegrass plant, and they can grow the seeds starting at about a ½ inch from the ground. So that's an easy one to pull. Common chickweed, henbit, dead nettle, speedwell, some thistles, bittercress. Those are all different types of winter weeds. Okay, sometimes you get volunteers that are plants that you put there on purpose. In my own yard, I have some creeping jenny and some canna lily. But sometimes plants have propagated or spread on their own, and that they've either become too crowded or gone into a place in your yard that you don't want them. What you can do is move them. The best time to move a plant is the fall. You can move them to another location. You can dig them up. Be sure you get the roots in the soil and offer them to neighbors, friends, or relatives. Or you can pot them up and offer them to a master gardener because we have an annual plant sale. Sometimes they're just happier than you planned on them being. Control methods. The life of an undesirable plant determines the best time and method of controlling it. So you first need to start with buying seeds that are weed-free, buying plants that are weed-free, or buying material that is weed-free. You don't want to start off with weed seeds right away. Use weed-free soil. If you purchase a truckload of soil or applying home compost, cover it with black plastic and wait 6 months before using it. By covering it with black plastic, the heat should kill the majority of the viable seeds that may be hiding in that soil or compost. So if you're not sure if the soil you ordered has been deemed weed-free, plan ahead about 6 months. So you purchase it, let it sit under black plastic, and then 6 months later, you're ready to use it for planting season. Keep your gardening equipment clean. Don't inadvertently transfer seeds or disease from one part of your garden to another. When you're rinsing your tools, be careful that you're not washing seeds into another part of your garden that you don't want them to go into. You can also use a bucket with sand in it, and you can put your shovel or your clippers or whatever in and out of that sand to try and clean them off. There are control methods that involve providing a barrier so that seeds cannot get in contact with the soil. Landscape fabric, newspaper, and cardboard are some barriers. You do need to know that landscape fabric will not decompose, and once there's mulch on top, they may even continue to grow weeds or seeds on top of the landscape barrier. Layers of newspaper or cardboard used as blockers will eventually disintegrate, but they will initially keep the seeds from germinating. Light is one of the most important factors in any kind of plant germinating, as well as especially in seeds. So if you put down mulch, you can keep light from reaching those seeds. Mulch is a great way to keep weeds from germinating, and it also improves your soil. Put down between 2 and 3 inches of mulch. With our Georgia heat, rocks are not advised. The small rocks like the river rock or the white marble rock, those are not advised to put close to your plants. They can reflect the heat onto the upper part of the plant and absorb heat and burn the roots beneath the ground. However, there are some plants that are desirable for warm, hot soil. If you go to the Smith-Gilbert Garden, where some of our master gardeners volunteer, there's a crevice garden there using pieces of concrete to create tiers. Plants that are adapted to grow in hot conditions have been planted there. Control methods. Physical weed control or eradication. Hand removal, just pull or dig them up. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Of course, it's easiest when the weeds are immature and small. The right tool can be a lifesaver. There is no shortage of tools. Choosing the best tool for the job gets to the root of the problem and makes a big difference. And manufacturers are now making tools that are friendly to those of us who might be suffering with a touch of arthritis or some other disability. So it is still becoming more and more convenient for us to use different tools to help pull up the weeds. Mow before the production of seed begins. By doing this, you will avoid spreading seed that is undesired throughout the rest of your lawn. Control methods. You can hoe the weeds out, expose and kill their root, or till or hand churn the soil. This will bury weeds that are evident but may expose dormant seeds or weeds that begin to grow. Even though the jury is still out on whether to till or not to till, there's still growing evidence for no-till gardening. Good fungi, microbes, insects that are kept intact are beneficial to your garden. So there are some pluses and minuses for tilling, but there's growing evidence favoring no-till gardening. Okay, this is my personal favorite. It's goats. There's been an increase of business of renting goats. They can clean out kudzu, English ivy, poison oaks, and many other invasive plants. Some people even rent the goats to clear their garden. They may have corn stalks or other vegetables, scraps that have been left behind. Once cleared by goats, you can get more easily to the root of the weed where you can pull it, or sometimes just the goat chomping all the way down to the base is enough to kill that weed. There are biological methods. Some insects will feed on weeds. Pictured here is the thistle weevil, and that's used to control noxious thistleweed. But please do your research before you introduce any insects into your garden to avoid an ecological disaster. Chemical control should be your last resort. Do-it-yourself weed control should follow any guidelines, and we have some, especially for ornamental plants and lawns, put out by the University of Georgia. Follow UGA guidelines for weed control, and these are available online and in the Extension office. The timing of the chemicals is dependent on the weeds. UGA Extension has printouts that are available to you, and you can print them or request them. But the most important thing about using any kind of chemical is to read the label before using it. You need to know the correct time, the correct amount, the correct way to apply it, and we also need to know how to dispose of either leftover chemical or the container that the chemical came in. Please read the labels before using any chemicals. Some chemicals are selective. They will kill some plant species and not others. They usually contain something called atrazine. That's found in a product called Weebegon and other named products. Non-selective generally kills all the plants, such as glyphosate. That's in Roundup. We cannot recommend one brand over another, but we can recommend active ingredients that you need used. For example, we can tell you that glyphosate is an effective non-selective vegetation killer. We would not suggest that you purchase Roundup. It's up to you which product you purchase. Pre-emergence are applied before weeds germinate, and you can see here the list of active ingredients in pre-emergence. Pre-emergence must be applied at the correct time before the weeds germinate. In northern Georgia, the timing is the first 2 weeks in September. In southern Georgia, the timing is the first 2 weeks in October. Pre-emergence must be watered in to be activated. However, too much water would degrade the effectiveness. Be careful not to vacuum up granular pre-emergence with your lawnmower. Post-emergence act by being absorbed into the roots. Brand names in these categories include Weebegon, Image, and others. These are the active ingredients that you can find in post-emergence. Okay, there are some organic controls. You can boil hot water and pour it on the weed, and it will essentially boil the weed until it. You can use vinegar. However, please note that once vinegar is in the soil, it may prevent something from growing for years. Household vinegar is only about 5% acetic acid, whereas horticultural vinegar is about 20% acetic acid. I might suggest that you use this in places where you have like cracks in the sidewalk and something is growing through, and you don't want something to grow there again in the future. How you apply the chemicals is as important as what you apply. So chemicals will cause damage to the plants that they touch. Contact herbicides may damage all the plants around where you're spraying. So you may take a water bottle or a milk jug and cut it to create a funnel so that the herbicide can be directed only at the plant that you want, and the sides will protect the herbicide from going to other plants surrounding one that you're wanting to kill. Our go-to publications here at the Extension office are pictured here. Weeds of the Southern Turf Grasses and Georgia Pest Management Handbook.
We hope that you will find our information informative and helpful. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.